Okay.
Okay,
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is the AZ Water Association Water Treatment Committee webinar on operating during a crisis, continuation of operations plan, or we'll just refer to them as COOPs throughout the presentation. Today, it's Tuesday, April 14th, 2020, from 12 to 1 p.m. We have two presentations that'll be given and then one 20-minute session for panelist discussion. This webinar will be a discussion of what a COOP is and when to implement your plan. There are free resources included in the downloads or handouts section here that are templates from EPA and FEMA, and also EPA pamphlet on pandemic response. This webinar will discuss COOPs from local water utilities, how they developed them, how and when they implemented them, and key takeaways, operating and managing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Jason Bobko. I'm with the ADEQ. Today's first speaker will be Brian Warner from the Apache Junction Water District. He'll discuss key elements of the COOP and what has helped them to remain in operations during this pandemic. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Brian.
And Jason, before you do that, I've got to close our poll with about 80% respondents. It's pretty evenly split. About 57% of attendees do have a COOP in place right now. So I will go ahead and close that so you can share screens again. And you're good to go.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian and Mike, are you on?
All right. That's my screen.
Are you seeing the screen? Our screen yet?
Yes, to see your screen.
And the presentation up?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. Elements of our COOP and where we're headed. Okay. All right, I think my slides set up there. Again, I am Brian Warner, Apache Junction Water District. In our presentation, we want to just make sure that we're keeping in touch with the CDC guidelines, and that we avoid touching our faces, that we practice frequent hand washing, 20 seconds. First of all, having operators, we are the key staff to run our plants. My particular plan is designed for remote operations, and we are not fully staffed 24/7, but I have remote capability that as long as I can connect to the internet, I can see my plant, I can run my plant and do everything from my phone or PC. Minus touching valves and actually turning valves. Power. My plant is fed two different sources. I have two different shore power supply connections, and we also have diesel power on site, and enough fuel that a single tank would run my plant 3 to 4 days without having to add more fuel. Our COOP plan is to keep that tank topped off. We go to remote power operation. Keeping chemicals. Our chemicals are truly what run our plants, and keeping chemicals in front of there and having active inventory and a complete inventory. So having an active and living plan is to know your emergency response plan, to review it, practice tabletop exercises. TTXs are very valuable in these situations. We have drilled on them. We've talked about them. And one of the key things that those have done for us is it helps us keep communication in all directions, up and down the chain of command. Some of the failures that we've seen or talked about in tabletop exercises are that information coming top down only. As things change in the field, we're not continuing without the communication when it breaks down. That the organizers and directors are unaware of what's happening, and so keeping that communication going both ways at all times is a big part of our COOP and keeping going. Reassurance of the plan to members of the team are key to successful implementation, and they will result in the best expected performance of that COOP. AZ Warren is our local agency. Through agreements with other cities, they have been activated right now and are currently activated for this pandemic and available to trade services and have plans and dollar values all associated. You'll know what expenses are there. We've included a link for the EPA's incident action checklist for pandemic incidents. It's a really thorough list, and it's a good idea if you don't have one. I think we answered in our quick poll that about half have had a COOP in place. There's also in this document, there's some other links we have posted as well. The EPA COOP template is included in that as well. All right, the plan: create a contact list of critical staff. We have in place now identified all our critical staff and what they'll do in situations. We have currently adopted some of those staffing changes right now moving forward. We need to have contacts in place for chemical suppliers, deliveries, and backups to those plants, and backup and alternative suppliers. Maintaining SCADA, IT, and instrumentation staff, keeping those guys both safe and then keeping them readily available to manage outages and frequent calibrations and connectivity. We need to prioritize maintenance that needs to be performed and is critical to maintain operations. These things in particular were during pandemics, they don't happen when it's maybe the best time. We have planned equipment down for service, and we need to have and be able to prioritize that maintenance to get that equipment up and running again and to keep it running. What do you have to do? Reads, rounds, and labs, a big part of what happens at our plant. We need to check in, use the buddy system as we have started to split up our staff, keeping guys in the loop. Guys that are operating remotely, keeping those guys in tune with the guidelines that are coming down from our government, our state and local officials, and city officials. So see something, say something. There's things going on that maybe might create panic, and we just want to be aware. We want to keep non-essential people away from the plant and stick to the plan. When you have your COOP in place, stick to that plan. One of the things that has revealed itself in tabletop exercise is adjusting the plan for changing elements. Our plans have to be solid. We have to stick to them, but we need to be able to adjust for things that change. As we start to have maybe a loss or absenteeism, what are we going to do? And so adjusting the plan for those changing elements is critical to what's happening and keeping the plan living. Employee management, managing separation, social distancing, The different sites and locations where we have guys working, telework where applicable. So we currently have business staff, billing staff working remotely and through telework situations. Remote operations specifically for our plant is we have leads operating from home. We have operational staff at the plant monitoring by the minute operations, keeping instrumentation up to date, keeping our equipment clean, calibrated, and ready. The separation just has our folks, our employees, not together, doing a little more singular responsibilities right now, and adapting that plan to keep those guys safe and to keep operations of the district continuing. We still have meters to read, service orders to take care of, and these are the things that how we choose to get those done. Compliance details. Daily, hourly, weekly, monthly sampling, as we don't know how long this is going to last. We need to have plans in place to protect those things and bolster them up. Internal and external labs and reporting. The limitations and where the weak links might be, both in our internal labs, maintaining reagents, chemicals, supplies, bottles, making sure that we have those bottles, that things aren't getting dropped or left behind while we adapt our focus forward and towards other tasks maybe that might be pulling us. So, external labs, making sure that we use courier and self-delivery, so making sure that those are in place and we have a plan to keep those going. And the reporting to the local federal agencies. Process control versus compliance requirements. A lot of process control things that happen within the plant, keeping those up to date so that remote operations can maintain continuity and keeping up with compliance requirements. Operational challenges. Some of the things that we've seen in our practice is being able to run the plants in hand. Some guys within our staff have seen that, and some guys have never seen it run in hand. And so most of our plants include automation that flow pace our chemicals, our flows, and they're based on active level set points, pressure set points. And these things right now we're finding need to be monitored differently. And in these conditions, kept robust and updated. They need to reflect our current goals and be prepared to operate our plants without SCADA help if needed. And so drilling for those things are still paramount right now. We've also noticed daily demand changes as our customers work and remain home while businesses are closed. Target set points need to reflect our usages and our areas of low flow and newer high flow areas resulting from current demands. Storage reservoirs, keeping tank turnover, keeping our booster sites active. THM strategies and goals need to be active, and they need to be continued, and maybe in low flow areas may need to implement flushing and have those plans in place as well. Letting our tap base know that our water is safe, our treatment is effective against viruses, save the bottled water for events that might need it. And I kind of ran through this really fast. In summary, just resuming normal operation after the pandemic. We have kind of some new normal feelings out there, and I think social distancing and working remotely will lead to updates of this plan, and we'll be able to add in the things that worked in our plans and highlight those that might be modified for future use, and how we might do it differently. So I think keeping those in mind are definitely the elements that have kept us going. My plan is designed to run remotely, so it hasn't changed our day-to-day operations too much. and we'll continue to operate in that stance and keep going with those things. So I did run through that kind of quickly. There are some links up there. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them now.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
All right, we'll turn it back over to Jason. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Again, that was Brian Warner with AJ Water District. The next speaker up is Neha Boala. Neha is a former engineer with experience in water treatment and distribution. For the past 15 years, Neha has been a management consultant focused on increasing overall effectiveness of organizations. She has done business process improvement, performance benchmarking, organizational assessment and design, stakeholder engagement and technology for public agencies across the U.S. and the Pacific. Her work in the water industry, it spans capital program planning, design and construction, asset management, operations, and maintenance. She is currently a senior advisor with GHD, helping utilities meet their most pressing business challenges. So I'm going to give the screen over to Neha.
Great, thank you.
And if you're just joining us again, this is the AZ Water Association presentation on continuation of operations plan during a crisis. Thank you.
Could I get confirmation that it's you can see this now in slideshow mode?
Right now I have a blue screen.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can switch it. Looks like my control panel disappeared. Bear with us, everybody. We're just having a little bit of technical difficulty.
While Neha is getting that sorted, this is Shayna Schwarz with AZ Water, and I wanted to thank you guys all again for joining. Today would be the first day of our annual conference, and just on a personal note, I miss seeing you all in person, and we hope everyone is safe and well. We're so glad that you could join us today, and we will have more webinars coming. If you are interested in hosting a webinar or have a topic that you would like to see us present, please email me at staff@azwater.org. And these are for you all. So however we can help, we'd really like to be able to. So thank you.
Okay. All right, I've reorganized things. I still don't have my control panel back. Am I in slideshow mode now?
We can see your slideshow.
No.
We can see the
Yes.
We can see the slides on the side of the screen, but your presentation is big enough, so I think you're.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. All right. Every time I switch to slideshow mode, something weird happens. So.
Yeah, but no, we can read it, so I think you're good to.
All right, let's just use it this way then. Thanks, guys. Sorry about the little technical snag. I'll just walk through this. So, topic is about business continuity, which in this context you can think about as the continuity of your operations. A lot of the themes I'll be touching upon here we've heard about already in Brian's presentation, which is great. And the idea is that once you start implementing some of those actions, there's some additional considerations to keep in mind. So as we all know, at this point, COVID-19 has spread rapidly and with great impact. We've been forced to react and adapt with new ways of working both on site and at home and in our professional and our personal lives. And while we know that the impacts to all of us have been felt over the past few days and weeks, we should be prepared for those effects to last for the foreseeable future. You might have been hearing the term the new normal, and we're certainly expecting that there will be a very different new normal after this is over. There's been a video circulating in the water industry that was put out by the Global Water Leaders Group called How Water Utilities Are Implementing Business Continuity During COVID-19. If you haven't seen this video yet, I highly recommend it. It's really short, but really interesting. They're a series of interviews with different water utility leaders from around the world. And there was a quote from a manager of water for Italy's second largest water provider. This was in a region that was very badly impacted by COVID-19. And what he said was that they had worked to reduce the level of risk in the organization over the years, ensuring that their services are resilient in the face of main breaks and plant outages. But the challenge from the coronavirus has come from a very different direction. In this case, the most relevant problems concern the work organization, not the facilities. So the focus of past risk planning has been elsewhere. It's long been recognized that because water is essential to human health and life, business continuity planning for water utilities is extremely critical, but risk plans have tended to focus largely on the supply and the infrastructure, as we just heard about in that quote. COVID-19 presents rapid, unexpected, and large-scale challenges to the work organization itself. So what are some of those challenges? As I mentioned, you've heard about many of these in Brian's presentation, so I'll just touch upon them lightly. One that I think is very key at a very personal level for everyone in the organization is that this illness is local and it's global. That means that everyone from the utility leaders to your workforce to your customers have all been personally affected in some way. It may be the case that they know somebody who's fallen ill. It may be that they're worried about falling ill. It may be that their daily lives are disrupted. They're caring for loved ones at home. Something has changed. And so as leaders of teams, as managers, and as leaders in various types of utilities, it's important to recognize that boundary between the personal and professional has been blurred. There's this thing that's affecting us on both levels. And so as you think about your workforces, think about the fact that those personal impacts are going to carry over in their professional lives and vice versa. The second major challenge that we're learning about more is disinfection needs and social distancing measures to keep your on-site workers safe. There are new protocols that are being put in place to limit the contact and spread of disease. We've heard already from Brian about the social distancing measures, including increased remote work, so telework whenever possible. And the research is showing that the demands are multiplied on those who are caring for children who are no longer in school or daycare. They may be caring for elderly relatives, or they might be just caring for other loved ones at home. Then going kind of bigger picture, there's been major supply chain disruption. We've seen that there's reduced access to contractors, consultants, materials, and services. And then as a global challenge, there is what is now referred to as an instant economic crisis. That means that your customers may have reduced ability to pay, which means you may be seeing decreases in revenue. You might see that your demands for water have dropped, and reports are that it has dropped in the range of 8 to 10% for some utilities. And that means that there's less revenue then to pay for the services and the level of services that you've been offering, as well as reduced funding for future investment. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things you can do to address each of those major challenges. When it comes to the personal and professional challenge of dealing with a local and a global illness, there are things you can do to support your workforce. For example, doing a more comprehensive organization-wide risk assessment, which includes not just the infrastructure, but things like information technology and risk to your workforce. It's really important that you step up your communications, both internally and externally. This is a situation in which you really cannot over-communicate. It's important to be able to share with both your employees and the customers you serve everything that you're doing and everything that you're thinking about in order to reassure them that that they're going to be able to continue relying on a safe supply of water. It's important to assess the needs of your workforce on a really detailed level. What do they need from their perspective to do their jobs day to day? And then, as I mentioned before, understanding and acknowledging the personal impacts and providing additional support wherever needed in order to help them be better professionals when they are at work. Some of the things to consider with regard to on-site workforce who are going to be around new disinfection methods and social distancing needs, doing a thorough health and safety evaluation, a thorough evaluation of your operations, thinking about what kind of data and technology might be able to be put into place in the short term to provide support. Think about your governance and decision making. So if you've had bottlenecks in your organization on getting things approved or getting decisions made, those bottlenecks are going to be exacerbated by this crisis. And it's important to really think about how high of a level is required for that decision. Can it be pushed down further into the organization to allow people to be to take more autonomy and make decisions more rapidly? You might think about realigning your business processes to support the fact that you've got fewer people on site, more people working remotely. We've talked about strategic communications. We've talked about workforce needs assessment. Because your team on site are going to be working physically distant from one another, they're going to miss some of the camaraderie that comes from just having a social relationship when they go to work. So it's really important to step up your engagement of your teams on site, however possible. And then thinking about the potential near term, following following COVID-19, think about return to work planning. You're probably not going to want to flip a switch and ask everyone to show up at work, for their normal duties on the same day or for the same shift. You might think about making a softer reentry to help them transition back to whatever this new normal is. For your remote workforce, as I mentioned before, some of the demands have actually multiplied for them, especially if they're caring for others while they're at home attempting to do their remote work. So in addition to things like a health and safety evaluation, which might include ergonomic considerations, you also want to do some of the same things we just discussed with regard to decision making, thinking about your business processes, thinking about your communications and what your workforce really needs from moment to moment to get through their workday. Engaging a team virtually is going to look a bit different than it will on site. It takes a lot more effort, but there's definite payoff in terms of maintaining connections between people and maintaining the connection to your organization. You really want people to retain their sense of commitment and purpose in delivering a safe, reliable water supply to your customers. And then similar to the remote workforce, think about the return to work planning and making some kind of soft reentry from remote work back into on-site work. Supply chain disruption has been a big issue, we understand, with water utilities, particularly getting things like chemicals and custom parts like pumps and filters that are made outside of the US in particular. So things that you can think about for strengthening your supply chain is about making sure that there are ways for your contractors and consultants to work on site with appropriate health and safety practices in place. And perhaps more importantly to both your utilities and the communities they serve, it's engaging suppliers as partners from the top to the bottom to make sure that you're able to provide mutual support, that your suppliers have cash flow and are able to remain solvent. This is especially important for more vulnerable, smaller businesses like SBEs, WBEs, and MBEs. You might think about forward ordering if you can afford it to provide them an influx of cash. Good. Playing orders in advance for short supply items. So for example, we've been hearing about shortages globally of chlorine bleach. And then really placing an emphasis on those long lead items that might be foreign made in anticipation of delays in both the manufacturing as well as being able to get delivery of those. So you can, as a kind of a last thought on supply chain, it's working with those in your supply chain to fill short-term gaps in your organization. So if you have a need for some sort of short-term service internally, think about bringing somebody on as a staff augmentation role temporarily. The last and really big one is the instant economic crisis. I think most of us will immediately go to, let's find ways to reduce our costs. But before you do that, it might be helpful instead to think about what are the impacts to your operation and what are the things you can do to actually adapt or mitigate those problems. So think about what the immediate financial impact might be caused by COVID-19, as well as the future impact following the crisis. If you do need to reduce costs immediately, you can think about prioritizing or reprioritizing your operations and your capital spend. You can think about outsourcing portions of your portfolio. You can do some strategic evaluation of your O&M and doing detailed technical review to find ways to save costs, and think about ways to evaluate your workforce needs and rebalancing staffing so that you can avoid layoffs, because that will go a long ways towards providing financial support in your communities. And then on the flip side of that, there are ways to increase revenue, even in times like these. So one that we found really helpful in providing a quick influx of cash has been identifying opportunities to sell or otherwise draw value from surplus real estate. There are also opportunities like never before in public-private partnerships, and there are opportunities from the government and other parties to obtain low-cost loans. That was a lot to cover in a very short time, so thank you all for your attention. I'll just leave you with this thought, in that we recognize that coronavirus is both a local and a global illness, and that we are truly all in this together. So it's organizations like the Arizona Water Association that brings together people from different organizations to share knowledge and to share resources. And in times like these, this is going to be more important than ever. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Neha. All right, so we're a little ahead of schedule, and that's okay. So I did want to go back for 1 second. I apologize to Brian for not reading his bio for you. Up next is going to be our panel discussion. Brian's going to be part of that. Brian's the lead operator of AJ Water District and Apache Junction. They currently operate a 2 MGD direct filtration plant using chlorine dioxide, alum, and polymer. Brian has 20 years experience in small water treatment surface and groundwater systems. His treatment experience extends to Cap Waters in Arizona, Colorado, Big Thompson Water in the Denver, Colorado area. Brian is a water treatment 4 and distribution 4 and a grade 1 collections operator. We just heard Neha speak, and Pete Weaver is going to be one of our panelists as well. Pete is the current emergency management coordinator at the town of Gilbert. He retired in 2016 as the emergency management director for Maricopa County. Prior to that, he was the emergency management director for Pinal County. He's managed over 15 presidential disasters of varying causes and magnitude. He holds a master's in public administration as a certified emergency manager, certified floodplain manager, and a certified public manager. So this is your time, if you'd like, to start some questions for the panel, and we're going to start the panel discussion.
Unmuted.
All right, who is on the line right now for me?
So this is Mike Worlton from GHD.
Hey, Mike.
I had a question for Brian. So it sounded like you have adjusted your operations to avoid interaction. I know some of our other clients have basically kind of, well, City Phoenix, for example, has reduced any interaction with operators. They consider them critical to the system operation, obviously. Is this similar process or similar policy that you guys have in place where interaction with outside consultants and the operators is limited?
Yes, Mike. So we started to just defer our shifts and stagger overlap. So we're doing a lot more communications via the phone and less face-to-face. Just giving guys the opportunity and maybe a little personal security in that you know there's some certain unknowns that we're dealing with out there we can't see or we can't know or identify, you know, some of the fears. And so that's just what we've done so far. Just kind of stagger our shifts where we're not having face-to-face overlap very often.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, this is Mike Loggins. I'm here with Brian. Just to give you a little more information, we've talked to several other utilities across the nation. Some have staggered their employees where they'll have half their staff come in one day, half staff come in the next day, and rotate every day. Some have rotated weekly by having them at home doing some work and also being at work doing some. Brian's talked to some plants across the nation that have brought their operators into their facility and are not letting them leave at this point in time and keep them there so they have less interaction with the public. So there is several different things that people are doing out there. I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but it's truly up to those water utilities to figure out what works for them.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Since nobody's talking, I'll kick in. I'm Pete Weaver, currently with the town of Gilbert, and I've worked with Steve Shepard and AC Warren a lot over the years, probably since the inception of AC Warren. And I just want to thank you all for what you do. You are the critical infrastructure, and you do take care of the masses. And during times like this, it is difficult for you to heavily plan for COOP. It's not like you can just give up your building and go somewhere else to work. You have to stick it out where you're at and be creative. And I also, you know, truly enjoy the relationships that freshwater has with wastewater, knowing that we can't have the taps on if there's nowhere for the water to go. So those relationships are really good to be able to help each other during these tough times. As soon as this whole incident started, we started looking at PPE really closely because you all use PPE on a daily basis for certain parts of your operation. And that's critical. So we grouped you right in with public safety as far as, you know, needs for N95s or dust masks or other things such as gloves. They're already in short supply. And that helped us gain some traction. It also helped us learn a few things that there are some items we're going to go back to likely centralized procurement, not only to save money, but be able to build a 3-month buffer rotational stock supply. So in case anything like this happens again, we're not going to run into a shortage. We know we can get by for 2-3 months with N95s and rubber gloves and different things. A silver lining that came out of this is sanitizer for hard surfaces became very difficult, and our One Water plant was able to make sanitizer on site. And the product worked really good, and I can foresee this possibly in the future as a consideration for them to make a little money on, but then save the rest of the organization a great deal of money compared to what we were paying for the same products. Just something to consider if you have that ability. Some of the other things that we found were interesting was the virtual operations. I know a lot of the plants are set up highly technical, highly internet-based, but then we still have SCADA and things to work around with that. But all in all, my hat's off to water and wastewater for keeping things going. I don't think a lot of the public and a lot of the rest of your organizations realize without water and wastewater, there's so many things that can't happen, that don't work. This whole pandemic would be a trillion times worse if you guys start failing. Power generation, I mean, the domino effect and the layers that you guys touch it's amazing. So, you know, with that, I'll just turn it back over. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for sticking it out and adapting, doing your distancing to stay healthy, to keep your workers engaged and healthy. And that's it. I won't monopolize any more of the conversation. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Pete. Hey, Pete. Again, this is Pete Weaver with the town of Gilbert, and we have a couple questions from the audience I want to field, specifically for the town, Pete. You talked about it a little bit, but what has Gilbert set up, and how long did it take to develop?
So having COOP plans in place over the years is one thing, but to be able to blow the dust off them when something like this is occurring, it happened rather quickly. We just had everybody take a good hard look or relook at their essential functions. What things do they have to do and have to get done, and prioritize those and figure out ways that we're going to be able to get those done. We grouped everything into 3 categories: the must-dos, the should-dos, and the would-be-nices. And we knew right away the would-be-nices are going out the door, and then it would turn into a concentration of the must-dos and should-dos. And if necessary, chip away and get rid of some of the should-dos and just concentrating on the must-dos. And our folks were unbelievably dynamic. I think what was critical for us was the communication throughout the organization, trying to, point in a common direction with county, state health, CDC, run the course, even though they're going to get off kilter, and try and relay that information out of the workforce, which is often difficult to get to the frontline folks. And I'm sure every organization struggles with that. We just kept trying and trying and trying, and we'll still have to keep trying so that we're on the same page. You have to get rid of the fears and just try and stick with facts.
Great, thank you. All right, this is a utility question. So this is really open to our panel. So for utilities with multiple employees, are you guys limiting how many people are required to work at any given time? We can start with Brian from AJ.
I'll answer that for Brian. This is Mike Loggins again. We are not limiting who has to be here. We want to keep a minimal staff. As Pete was saying, we still have to do the must-dos on our list and get those things done. But we have sent some people home that have worked telework at this point, doing some training. But we've also told them if something does happen, an emergency arises, or if another employee gets sick or something goes on, that they will be required to come back to work, and just as if they were working here that day. So it's not like they're on vacation and can go home and do whatever they want. We're keeping them available to us just in case something does arise.
All right, thank you. We have another question too. Brian, you mentioned AZ Warren. The question is there any way tribal utilities can get more information on whether they can become members of AZ Warren?
Yes, and there's a link to AZ Warren and Steve's contact in our presentation. Let me see if I can forward to that slide, and we'll put up Steve's contact information and his email and telephone. We can certainly, if you can share my screen, Jason. We have great relationships. They are meeting weekly. They're meeting weekly right now to stay abreast of what's happening, where the resources are going, what resources are available, and we definitely steer them that way for more information.
And Jason, before this used to be an intergovernmental agreement. It has changed now to a more reach out to everybody agreement, I guess. We changed that about a year or two ago. So all private utilities recently accepted a couple of those. So I'm sure we could bring in some of the tribes and some different things that are out there. As Brian was saying, there was a Warren, not AZ Warren, but someone out of Idaho that chlorine or carbon dioxide was not available, one of their suppliers, and reached out to everybody across the nation. So it's not just AZ Warren, it's the nationwide Warren that we have here too. And different people came up with different solutions for them that were in the water industry. So it's been great to understand what's going on, not only here in the state, but also all over the nation.
All right, great, thank you. Let me go back to my slides. And for all of you looking at home, yes, that's my barbecue. Sorry about that. This is a live presentation, so we appreciate you all coming today and attending. So are there any more questions from the audience right now? Okay, so we have the handouts available on the bottom on the slides. We'll have the presentations available for your use. If you have no other questions right now, if you do come up with any in the future, you'll see the contact information up on the screen. You can contact myself. I can forward on any emails that I can't answer myself. You'll see the water treatment at easywater.org email. Neha has shared her email address with you. Remember, ADEQ is here to help utilities throughout the state. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You can contact the Maricopa County Environmental Services Department as well, or PDEQ for those down in Pima. So if there's really nothing else, then I want to thank everybody for coming, and you have a good day.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Jason.
The Intertribal Council of Arizona. That was my question involving the tribal utilities a little earlier. I just wanted to let you know that we do, our program does do work nationwide for regions 5 through 10. And then if you guys have any information that you would like to get disseminated, we can also be utilized in that way as well. We're just interested in trying to get tribal utilities involved in a lot of these preparedness activities. So any information you guys can provide that would be useful, that would be appreciated.
Great, thank you. So if you want to send me your contact information, I can include it on our informational slide that goes out to the participants, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, this is Mark Gross. Just a quick question for Brian and Mike. Have you guys seen any supply issues yet with any of your chemicals?
Thanks for asking, Mark. No, we haven't noticed anything yet. I typically keep our plant, with at least 60 days of chemicals and things in front of there. And I've tried to keep those relationships open with our vendors and just talking to those guys, making sure that, they have supplies and that they are able to meet the demand. But we have not seen or heard of anything trouble in the supply chain. It seems like maybe shipping might be taking a little bit longer because of the manufacturing plants that are operating remotely. So I've noticed some small vendors and large vendors alike that may be a little bit slower in the train just because of the way that they're handling and maybe operating at minimal staff right now.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, this is Blake Epps. I have a question. So this is pretty unprecedented, and if it were to continue and in such a manner where such a large audience or large percentage of customers are unable to pay their bills for an extended period of time, I've heard percentages up to 30% of people, in this industry, not our industry, but restaurants, hospitality, things like that, which is a large portion in Arizona. If such a large percentage of people are unable to pay their water bills for several months, what would you guys do in that situation? I mean, I guess you have to keep providing water, but how do you prepare to handle something like that?
That is an excellent question, Blake. We're working on that. Obviously, I think almost all the utilities across the state have a no shut-off policy. And if people can't pay their bills, they're still keeping them on, keep them moving forward. We're still reaching out to our customers every month, talking to them that this isn't, a free pass. Eventually, your bill will have to be paid at some point. Or, we may have to reach out in the future to get grants from the government or something. We're not really sure where we're going to go with it at this point. I think we can manage it for a quarter or so. We haven't had that many people that have not been able to pay their bills right now. So hopefully it doesn't get worse, but we still are reaching out to those customers and making sure that if they do have something, at least provide a little bit so that it doesn't get worse for them in the next couple of months as they move forward and can't pay any of their bills.
Okay, so we also have on the panel, he joined us, Mike Zaragoza. He is with the Hill Brothers, and he could talk to us a little bit about chemical supply chain and how they're ensuring that you have chemicals and the chemicals are of good quality. So Mike?
Hey, good afternoon. So one of the things that Hill Brothers did is we have learned from different natural disasters, if you will, hurricanes, earthquakes. We've kind of been affected by all of it. And what we have done is we have forced our vendors and the manufacturers to make sure they're shipping to us from different points across the country. So we have stuff coming out of Houston, out of the Midwest, Canada, and then also we're bringing stuff in out of Asia, stuff like that, so that we always have caustic chlorine coming from multiple areas. The other thing we've done is we have most of our sales team, like myself, Jason Covenants, our head trainer, Julie Tennyson, we all come from the operations department, and they have put us kind of on restriction. They've got us all stuck in our houses so that if COVID does hit our plant, after it's disinfected, they can drop the 3 of us back in without a big issue, and they kind of have a backup operations team. And then we've made agreements with different trucks or trucking companies, bulk transportation, bulk carrier services, people like that, to make sure that we can get bleach out and caustic, sulfuric, and any of those needs. So we've kind of taken an approach of making sure that we stay very flexible so that you guys don't get hit with shortages, at least when dealing with, from our standpoint.
Great, Mike. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for coming today.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
All right. Any more questions out there for the panel? Okay. Well then, thank you again, everybody. If you have any questions, again, come up with something, please email me. And thanks very much.
Hey, thank you for your time on this, Jason. Thank you, everyone.
Glad to help.
Please feel free to drop questions to us. We'll add that contact information as well and update it on this presentation. Thank you all.